Hey everyone. So, what came up for this solar eclipse in Leo wasn't really what I expected. And maybe you're having a similar experience, or maybe you haven't even quite understood what is going on with this solar eclipse. And we're here to feel into it, debrief it together, because maybe you're watching this after it happened. But we are just beginning eclipse season this year, and we're going to do that without drama, without intensity, without saying this changes everything, this is terrible. We're going to do it as the sensitive, reflective, insightful people that we are. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments as well what you have been experiencing at the start of this eclipse season, because my story is a little bit unexpected around this. It's not exactly what I expected. On a conscious level, let's talk quickly about the facts of this whole thing instead of my experience or anyone's experience. So, on a conscious level, what we know is coming is a deep reflection on the meaning of performance and of ego and of what we show outwardly. Performing for others, being a version of you that essentially appeases the societal expectations around you, acting like you are someone who fits into society, which for a lot of us is a very big expectation because we don't really fit into society. Now, today, as I'm filming this, it is the 12th of August. It is the day of the eclipse, but I usually feel the energies of the moons, whether it's a new moon or a full moon, like a few days in advance. Same with this one, very intensely. We'll get to that. So let's step out of the drama that some people think that all of this is and think about the ways that go beyond the whole clickbait and intensity. And let's just feel into it, tackle what we know about the sun, about Leo, and how those express together the energy that we're working with, you know? So the sun, which Leo is associated with, are all about is all about the ego. The sun is the ego, and of course, it plays a huge role during the solar eclipse because the sun is vanishing. So the ego, the outward representation, is vanishing. And that in itself is already very meaningful metaphorically. Of course, the sun is also seen as shedding light and giving life in many or most cultures, really. I don't know if there's a culture that doesn't see the sun as life giving because it's literally the basis for us living on this planet. So that being obscured can be a little scary at first. But if we think about it psychologically, as I said, it's really just about the ego and about the outward representation. And nowadays we assign so much meaning to the sun sign. It hasn't always been like this. It used to be that the rising sign was actually more important than the sun sign, but especially with Western astrology and in the past centuries, it has become a huge deal to focus so much on the sun and on the ego, and ignoring that not always is the sun our truest self-expression. Now, this truest self expression without performance is what we are exploring when we look at the Leo and Aquarius axis. I'm speaking about an axis here because Leo and Aquarius are each other's counterparts. You know, they are on the opposite sides of the spectrum. And all of the signs that are opposite from each other, we speak about an axis that connects them, like a central theme that connects them. And with Leo and Aquarius, we're talking about an axis of community versus self, of the ego versus a vision for a greater communal living that Aquarius stands for. And as we go into the solar eclipse and living through it, and as we are stepping into the eclipse season in general, we are being shown what is really just a performance for others. Maybe you are feeling this already in your life, maybe the past few days or in the next week. You will suddenly grow tired of certain things that you do, certain things that other people do, because it feels like a performance, it feels fake. Especially people who mask very heavily, who feel very tired. Maybe that's you after spending time with people, because it takes so much energy to keep up that mask. We will be challenged a little bit, you know? And I'm not talking about being fake here. I'm talking about, we know that in order to exist, because we are different as people, we somehow need to, fit into societal standards of smiling, of being polite, and all of these things. But masks can also go much deeper than that. And that's also something that was revealed to me. I will talk about that later in the video. Now, also, you might be shown, like me, a glimpse of what full confidence in yourself without any masks would look like. Because for me, full confidence in selfhood means that what I do is good enough. It's the opposite of imposter syndrome. It is me saying, yes, my tarot readings are very philosophical, very psycho-spiritual, and that is okay. I don't have to try to make them predictive just to make people happy. I can be confident in the way I read tarot, and maybe you feel the same about some skills that you have, and you have been seeing or will see in the next few weeks a vision of what it looks like when you are truly confident in those skills, in your own skills, and you trust yourself enough to say, yes, it is good enough, and I can trust myself to do these things in a way that is good enough without trying to meet everybody's expectation at the same time. And you might feel a tiny tingle of what it could feel like when you're not performing to others or even for yourself. You know what it feels like if you don't permanently feel like you're being judged or questioned or watched, whether there's someone actually watching or not. You know, some of us have very loud inner critics, and those limit our truest self-expression as well. So in the next few weeks, in the next few times, in the next few weeks, it is a good time to figure out how you can explore those parts of you that you are kind of quietly hiding away, that you're maybe not even aware exist, but they will show themselves. And for myself, this showed itself in two ways. Specifically, in trusting my own skills, like I said, with tarot and my own unique way of reading tarot, because believe it or not, even though I've been doing it for over 8 years, sometimes when you go on social media and you see a lot of people doing it differently, you still doubt yourself. You know, there's little seedlings of doubt coming up, like maybe I should be doing it more predictively. But at the end of the day, my method is very psycho-spiritual, very philosophical, very symbolism centric, and it's not the quick, oh, this card means that he's cheating on you, this card means that you have to move on. But I go deeper than that. I see deeper patterns than that, which doesn't mean the predictive tarot reading is bad. It just means that it's not my thing. And I need to be able to say that with confidence. And only now am I able to see that so clearly. Yeah. So that's the first way it showed itself. And the second, I have to tell you a little bit of a story because it cut very deeply yesterday. And in that story, I will show you how I handled difficult emotions as well, especially during the eclipse season. Difficult emotions can come up, and it's really important that we don't try to numb them out, ignore them, but try to see them and try to deal with whatever is underlying. So let me tell you, today is Wednesday, and on Monday, I went to the gym in the morning at 8 a.m. I loved it. It was so empty, not very overstimulating like usually. I'm trying to build a better routine with movement. And then afterwards, when I got home, I had a good routine of taking a shower, making breakfast, and then I got to work and I got a lot done, surprisingly much. I was working on new reading options for my shop, social media posts, scripts for videos, etc., etc. Now, that felt like a really good day. So, obviously, at the end of the day, I was like, let's do the same thing again tomorrow. But instead of going to the gym, I was like, that's a bit intense to go to the gym twice in a row. So instead, I went for a walk to a nearby little forest on Tuesday morning. And then I went grocery shopping for a quick minute afterwards. And then the day looked a lot different than I was expecting because I was exhausted. I was incredibly exhausted from doing those things. But the exhaustion and the tiredness wasn't necessarily the issue, but what it brought up in me. Because as you can imagine, I was like, yes, I'm moving more, I'm getting more energy. It worked on Monday, it has to work on Tuesday. So in my mind, I had this resistance of like, no, it worked yesterday, it has to work today as well. And I didn't even do anything intense. Like the gym is more intense. I did go grocery shopping, which is also intense. But anyways, so I was frustrated. I was like, why isn't this working? Why do I just want to sit in front of the TV and chill and watch anything? Why do I want to do that instead of be productive? And could I not do something resting, like restful, but more productive than watching TV? So I noticed that resistance in me. And instead of going to watch the TV immediately, I noticed that resistance and I stopped for a second. And that is a very important method when you're trying to work on, do any inner work, really. So I was like, okay, let's speak about it. And I spoke to myself at length. I asked myself questions like, why do I have an issue with chilling right now? Rest is always a good thing after all. That is what we believe. Why do I still have an issue with it? And then it came up like, I should be having more energy for these things. I should be able to do all these things. And even if I don't, I shouldn't be watching TV. And then I asked myself, why shouldn't you be watching TV? Why not? And the answer at the end of the day that I arrived to is because it's not what a normal person does. A normal person doesn't watch TV during the day. That was the most like underlying core belief. And there I had it. I have this idea of what a normal person should do, what a normal person should act like, should have the energy to do, and what a normal person does on any given day and is permitted to do. And that idea has followed me for years. That's nothing new. And yet, I got to a deeper point with it yesterday. Because in my head, I realized that I was, even as I'm trying to take some rest, I am trying to perform some version of normalcy that I've constructed in my mind. Like, what is a normal routine? People go outside, people socialize, people work, people go to the gym. And I could never do all of that to the capacity that other people can. And I have to sort of accept that, and that's a difficult thing to accept. So I always like try to act like a normal person, and I'm not performing that to other people. Like, I don't care what other people think. It's really just in my head. I'm performing being a normal person to myself, to nobody else, just to myself. And realizing that that wouldn't work, that my whole mask of being normal that I'm trying to put myself into is not going to work, and I have to just relax and watch some TV, which is not what a normal person does. That was a threat to me. And why am I telling you all of this? I'm telling you that because I'm sure you have some idea of who you want to be and who you actually are and what you need. And this is such a complex topic because when we think about manifestation techniques, a lot of people say like, oh, just act like the person that you want to be. Just act like the person who already has, I don't know, they always promise you money. They say like, oh, a 6-figure business or a perfect morning routine or a perfect relationship. Just act like the person who already has that and it will come to you. Now, do I agree with that technique? To a degree, yes, but especially if you are neurodivergent, if you are maybe even somewhere on the disability spectrum, those things don't work to the degree that they work for people who have a lot more energy, a lot more patience, aren't overstimulated easily, and that's okay. But those new versions of ourselves that we're trying to build, we have to take into accountability what we actually need. And I feel like this solar eclipse is a beautiful way to take a very honest look at how you can construct a new identity for yourself, like a new what do you want to be, that is actually in alignment with your truest self and doesn't go against your truest self and is like a completely out there version of you that isn't even in alignment on any basis with your needs, with whatever you require to feel good and relaxed in your everyday life, and so on. So when I realized this, I cried a lot. I cried about this whole need to be normal, about this thing that I have constructed in my mind, needing to be normal while knowing that I'm not. And at the same time, I know that this idea of a normal person who doesn't watch TV every day or like during the day, but only at night, even that is a construction. There's plenty of people who would consider themselves normal who do that. So it's all just in my head. And I released all of that with the tears, and it was so freeing because that was a performance that I was upholding for myself. And that's really the question that I want you to go away with. I will give you more questions later as well. But one question is like, what are you performing for yourself, not even for other people? What masks do you wear for others? Sure, but also what masks are you wearing for yourself and trying to be for yourself, that you're telling yourself that you could be that? And how can you make that more fitting for your own truest self? And that's a really big question to think about. All right. So let's look at some journaling or tarot reading prompts that you can use. Before I drop the questions, I will say I will upload for my YouTube members and for my patrons a meditation for this, to release performances for others, for yourself, and to get into your truest self-expression. So if you want to, you can consider becoming a channel member and trying out that meditation. I hope it's really helpful. And since I'm doing this basically for free because ad revenue isn't much on YouTube, it really helps me that I'm able to keep doing this work, to have you support me as a YouTube member or as a patron. And it would mean a lot to me. That's all I will say. All right, now these are the questions for the Leo solar eclipse. You can get a piece of paper and a pen, or you could get your tarot cards and pull them while I'm speaking, or just write down the questions, or just listen and see what comes to your mind. I always say often the first thing that comes to your mind is the answer that is important for you. So try to at least scribble something down or remember those answers that come to you as I'm reading the questions slowly. So the first question is, what version of you are you regularly performing for others, especially for people who are not really close to you? So we're looking here at the masks that you perform for others, whether that is smiling overly much, being overly nice and helpful to people who maybe don't even expect that of you or don't need that, people-pleasing tendencies, but it could also be the exact opposite. It could be that you have a tough exterior, that you try not to get too close with anyone because that feels safer to you. And those are masks that maybe don't come from the heart. And feeling into that, what version you are performing for others. What is the vibe that you give that is maybe just a performance? And then the second question is, what is one thing that you do when you're surrounded by others, but not when you're alone? and that is very draining to uphold. So this is not about your personality, but maybe about specific actions. So when you think about that, when you draw a tarot card, you could look specifically at what the people on the card are doing to see what that behavior is that you might have that is a little bit draining when you're surrounded by others. The third question is, what do you think will happen if you stop doing that behavior when you're surrounded by others? So what will happen if you stop smiling, if you stop, maybe, you don't have to stop smiling altogether, but this is just a thought experiment. What would happen if you stop smiling so much at people? What would happen if you don't have this serious face to protect yourself from everyone all the time? Could be anything on that spectrum. What would happen if you don't say polite words? This is a thought experiment. It's not to say you can just screw everyone, but it's good to think about what would it look like if I stopped. And then the fourth question is, how would you feel after being in the company of others when you stop doing that thing? Would you feel maybe less drained or more yourself? So think about what that actually would look like. What would you feel like if you stopped doing that? How would it release you of the expectations of others or some weird expectations that you have of yourself? And then the fifth question is, what version of you do you feel the need to perform even when nobody is around? That is where we get into that stuff that I spoke about. That self-expression that is even limited when you're alone, or things you're not permitting yourself to do when you're alone because you think it would be weird, not normal, not in alignment with who you want to be, etc. So think about that. What version of you are you performing when nobody's around? This could also relate back to the first card very beautifully, because both of them, one is the version you perform for others and one is the version you perform for yourself. So you could draw some conclusions from that. All right. And then the sixth question is, why do you feel you have to perform that version of yourself for yourself, and what are you scared of? What part of you are you really trying to hide with that? Why do you feel like you need to perform for yourself something? What part of you scared of? Yeah. And then the seventh and final question is, how can you reveal, see, and integrate the part that you're trying to push away and hide with all of these performances? How can you get closer to that truest self-expression of you beyond the masks for others and beyond the masks for yourself? I hope these questions serve you well. I'd love to see you over on Patreon or on my YouTube members. As I said, the guided meditation will be live at the same time as this video, and it would be really cool to see you over there. And let me know in the comments what you've been working through. Because, yeah, I've been telling you what it's looked like for me. It's always a surprise with these astro events. All right, thank you so much, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye-bye.